Bubba, this weekend, Woodlawn the movie will be opening all across the country. We've been talking about this since back in November of last year, and we walked through the process of this movie being shot, trying to remind everybody that this was an interesting situation because we have personal ties to the true story, which the movie is based on. A lot of you around the country know the name Tony Nathan, who went on to have a stellar career with the Miami Dolphins, played at the University of Alabama. He played high school at Woodlawn, and that's where this story takes place. Todd Gerelds is joining us. Todd, of course, the son of Tandy Gerelds, who is the coach who was at the middle of all of this during a tough time in Birmingham when those schools were being integrated, and not everybody was thrilled about that. And it was a tough time during the racial struggles of this country. Birmingham, Alabama was the crossroads, once called by Martin Luther King Jr., the most segregated city in the country. And so this was not an easy thing for the Birmingham City Schools. And the thing that seemed to smooth it all out and really change the city forever was the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And Todd, you were a little boy when this was all going on. Your father was in the middle of this. Greg and I, of course, know you and your family because our dads coached together at Woodlawn. That's where Bill Burgess was the head football coach, and your dad was the assistant, and they established an incredible friendship there. Your mother and our mother established a great friendship. We, as the coaches' kids, established great friendships, and your dad has already stepped into eternity to receive his reward, and how his life was changed here, and then he was never the same, and went on to coach more football. Don't want to give away the way the end of the movie looks, but he did. And was an incredibly successful football coach. A lot of you that listened to the show in the northern part of Alabama, he had a great career at Deschler High School there, where you played for him there, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so as this story now is on the big screen, and you've been to various screenings, and we've got one tonight, the Birmingham premiere, which will be a lot of fun for all of us. Looking forward to seeing all of you that are coming there. And then you were asked to write the book. That is available, and you'll be doing some book signings now. There's also a 40-day devotional that goes along with it. I'm holding a copy of each one of those. What is it like for you, Todd? I mean, this is your family. This is not, like I was comparing it the other day when I watched Remember the Titans. For me, it was just a cool movie.
Right.
But for the people that's your dad, who Denzel Washington is playing now, or your dad, who was the other coach, I forget the name of that coach. And it's different to you. And that part of Virginia where it really happened, I'm sure that was a different experience for them. Sure. So now here we are on the other end of it. The rest of the country is just going to see a really great story and an inspiring movie, but this is your family's life.
Right, and it's. I mean, even this is a bit surreal, just because of our history.
Right.
Sitting here with
Right.
Rick and Greg,
Right.
and before Angie. I mean, it was Rick and Greg. We're going to see Rick and Greg, and growing up, and
but that was quite a daunting task.
Greg's talked about those days a lot too. So
well, I mean, there was always tragedy that occurred at the Burgess house too.
Oh yeah.
Jessica cut her foot on glass. I stepped on a nail out there.
That was always something.
Yeah, something. But anyway,
now, y'all wasn't part of the ones that burned the woods down, were you?
No, but
that's a different group.
That might have been the Ryan kids.
Probably
right.
It was all boys at that point. But no, it really is. Jill, my little sister, called me last night, and I was telling her, when you guys have known me long enough to know that I never shy away from attention.
Right.
But this is a little bit different because this is not about me at all. I get to tell an amazing story that it's all God. And so, like, I've probably never blushed as much in my life as I have lately because this is not about me.
Right.
And now I'll run around and do laps out here dressed up like something and say, "Hey, everybody, look at me!" for just to make y'all laugh. But this is serious business, and God did something amazing. And so for me to have the opportunity to have a platform to tell the story of how God changed hearts, and we've taken steps back here in the last several years, I think, as a country. And I think that the truth of the gospel is, I know that the truth of the gospel is the only thing that will get people's hearts changed. And to be able to communicate that in such a powerful way with the film coming out and to tell the story in the book has been an amazing blessing.
When you see things, I remember seeing your mom at one of the nights they were shooting, and I'm trying to wrap my mind around what it must be like, because you and your dad had such an incredible relationship. You don't have the baggage of a lot of people going, well, my relationship with my dad was all. You had a tremendous relationship with your father, and they capture some of that in the movie. But I know personally the respect you have, continue to have for your father. To see an actor take on the role of your father, what was that like?
That's a bit bizarre because, Nick's younger than me, Nick Bishop, who plays my father in the movie, and really comes at all of this from a very different worldview, coming in. And I know this is going out all over the place. And Nick, we pray for you, buddy, and really appreciate the job that you have done. But it's kind of funny because he plays that role. I look at him as like a figure has a lot of stature to me, and it's difficult to talk to him as though he's not my father. I mean, it's a little because part of that's because my mom's in love with him.
So okay, and that part's gotten weird.
Yeah, it's gotten kind of strange.
Yeah, it was.
But what a good call, though. I mean, if I'm in a movie and I was represented by Nick Bishop, I'd be really happy.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a good call.
Your dad has to be laughing about that. There are some things in his features that remind all of us of your dad.
Well, when he did the reading, Andy sent it to me. He had sent me all the people reading from L.A. when they were doing the screening for who was going to be casted, and when he sent me Nick, I was like, bingo. I mean, that is just spot on, really, as far as the
young version of your dad and all that.
Yeah, and so now, if you want to get into casting, though, the woman who plays my mom, come on.
Debbie was thrilled, wasn't she?
She's like, I think this is spot on.
Absolutely perfect. Perfect. Right now, I'll tell you what, they nailed this. Yeah,
Book it.
Book it. All that's funny because of knowing all of you. And so tell us, and we'll come out and we'll talk a little more about it. Well, let's do that now. We'll break and we'll come back. I want to talk about the book because that's obviously you got book signings coming up. If you want to see Todd, how about Tony Nathan, who is the main character of the movie? Todd's father is what I would say the next main character in the movie. But Tony Nathan will be with Todd at a book signing tonight.
Yes.
So Birmingham, Alabama, we have the Birmingham premiere tonight. And of course, Books A Million is going to be providing the books tonight for you to be there. But you'll actually be signing those at the movie theater tonight.
Correct. From 5:30 to 6:15. It's kind of funny because they said, we got to whisk y'all out of here and drive you back around to the red carpet. And I was like, well, we'd be right there. We can just
already
walk
in there.
I mean, we can just walk right over there.
Right.
And they're like, no,
you must be whisked.
Let them whisk. Let them whisk.
I'm whisking Toddarooski. But anyway, so if you want to get there early, and there's only like 3,000 people that are coming to see you on all the screens tonight.
Yeah.
If you want to get there, go ahead and meet Tony Nathan in person, meet Todd Gerelds, get a copy of Woodlawn, the book. Get that autograph there at the movie theater, sponsored by Books A Million, 5:30 to 6:15, and then all the red carpet stuff will start not long after that, and then we'll all go into the theater and we'll sit down in front of the various screens and we'll watch it. So we'll come back. I want to ask more specific questions about the book versus the movie.
I want to know how, when you write a book like this, the people involved, how do you approach that? Because, I mean, do they have to okay you to use them or what? But we'll get into it when we come back.
We'll be back. We've talked a lot about the movie, and rightfully so, Woodlawn, that will go everywhere as of tomorrow. Did you know it's the #1 downloaded movie trailer on iTunes right now?
I just heard that last night. My little sister told me.
Yeah, well, that's one of my kids just told me that. I wouldn't have known that. But anyway, so there's a lot of hype. It's funny. My daughter, who lives in Philadelphia, says they're talking about it here. It's everywhere. It's been on the Today Show. It's been on Fox News. They're interviewing everybody. It's all across the country. Loved the video that Tony Dungy put out about it, which was fantastic. Pastors telling other pastors this is an incredible evangelical tool. All that's going on, and then part of that is the book. So you had to sit down and go back and try to chronicle the real story, the true story, because yes, this movie is based on a true story, and the elements are all true. Right. Some of the details, before trying to take something that happened over 2 years and some change and move it into 2 hours and 10 minutes or something like that. you're going to have to
you combine events.
You got to get some timelines, and you got to make them work. But what you've done is taken the time to do what in the book?
That actually, I was talking to someone who had read it and was saying, it seems like there's some disconnect with the movie and everything else. And I said, that's intentional. I mean, the movie takes some liberties, but talking to Tony and his mom and my family, we're all extremely happy with the way that it turned out, because the movie is dramatizing some things and compressing and extending and everything else. But they're also illustrating things that were true at the time using devices, other characters, things like that might take another 30 minutes in a movie to try to develop a certain theme or something like that.
And you don't have that kind of time.
You don't have that kind of time. So the book actually is for somebody who wants the background, the backstory. The first chapter is really about the civil rights movement and the early things going on there. It gives you kind of how we headed into Woodlawn. And then the first students who came there before the mass busing of students came. And so it gives you a lot of backstory, and then really details each of the key characters in the movie, including you and I were talking off air about Wells Goebel, who in the movie, Hank Irwin wrote a good post on Facebook just the other day, really giving a lot of praise and stuff to Wells Goebel, who had a pivotal role in all of this. They combined the character of Wells Goebel into Hank Irwin. But if you want to know about Wells Goebel and you want to know about Hank and those characters individually, and even about Tony has a book, Touchdown Tony, Running with Purpose, that he's going to be signing tonight as well, and that gives you even more detail on Tony. But really, I wanted to here's how it all really happened and the backstories on a lot of these individuals. And so, a lot of people, like Greg Burgess, for instance, they, want to know what's the real story.
Greg, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I already saw. I figured it out early.
And there's something, and really, just to kind of tie to the show again, even though we've tried to develop how we're all tied together, you clear that up in the book. Here's when Coach Burgess was the coach. Here's how my dad ended up with Coach Burgess, ended up being the head coach. Here's how we all met each other. Even that's in there.
Right.
I mean, you even go that much in detail.
Sure. And even still, it's a really fast read. You consider the intellectual prowess of this brain; it's about a third grade level in the book, so it's a really fast read.
And it's a lot of historical data as well. Not of course to me, having Bobby Bowden do the Ford is really cool.
Yeah.
And then how you introed and talked about making clear that we all understood your dad's journey in this too, which I thought was fantastic.
Todd, when you write a book where you're telling a historical story, and it's really not your story per se, but a story you were familiar with, how do you go about doing that? I know when we did our books, because we were telling our story, you get a certain amount of leadway because it's the way you saw it.
Right.
But in a case like this, what happens? I mean, do you go to Tony Nathan and say, hey, I'm going to do this, or is he a public figure? How does all that, what's the mechanics behind that?
That's a great question. Starting off, it's kind of like, a lot of the Gospels and a lot of things in the Bible were passed along by oral tradition over time. That's one of the things that some people said, well, you were only 6 years old. How do you remember all that? Well, it never went away. It wasn't like I saw this story as a 6-year-old and then I was in a vacuum the rest of my life, or time just passed by and you forget, because I heard that story weekly. Mm-hmm. And my dad came to Christ through it, and so I saw it lived out weekly.
Right.
And
you saw him change.
Right, and so there was a massive impression made on me, and those type of memories don't go away. Plus, I mean, on the bordering on idolatry, loved Tony Nathan. I think and so everything about Tony I always remembered. So there was a lot of stuff I could just write by memory.
Right.
And so I'll just sit down and start writing.
But what if you write it and Tony Nathan reads it and goes, gosh, I didn't like that? I mean, how does that play out?
That's something that everybody has to deal with who writes any kind of historical narrative. And first off, we did interview most of the people who we have stuff on. We interviewed Wells, we interviewed Hank, we interviewed my mom, Tony's parents, and kudos to Mark Schlaball, who really helped a lot with a lot of the research. He's a machine, really. I mean, I'm pounding out stuff for 3 years on the book, and he hops on board, and it's like
organized.
No. I was like, man, there's a professional, and then there's me. But so we did talk with folks. There's still people who I think probably think that there's more that goes into, like, everybody should be paid who is mentioned in a book. First of all, we don't get paid unless the book sells. So it's but really a lot of things were public record. Otherwise, there was a man who to this day is really important to me, and I'd love to just say his name for people to know that he's not portrayed in the movie, but a really amazing character that you may read about in the book, Julius Clark, who was the boys' advisor. And at Woodlawn at that time, they had a white boys' advisor and a black boys' advisor. And Julius Clark, my dad, to the day he died, literally like 2 weeks before he died, he said, Julius Clark saved my life. I wouldn't have lived the life I did if he were not at Woodlawn.
So he was his accountability guy there. Once this started changing, he kind of discipled him.
Well, he was always there for my dad. Had my dad's back, so that if there was conflict and stuff like that,
and there were some.
Yeah, and he's a believer and just a godly man. And going and getting to interview him, case in point, we're going to portray him as he was, and really I hope it's a tribute to him, and that people who remember Julius Clark know that was a great man and still is.
We'll be back. If you have any questions about the book, Woodlawn, 866 We Be Big. Now, if you're coming to the Birmingham premiere tonight, and we got something special for the golden ticket seats coming back, then you can get there early, 5:30 to 6:15 at the theater, Patton Creek, Carmike Cinemas right behind the Galleria. Tony Nathan will be there signing copies of his book, Touchdown Tony. Todd Gerelds, who we're talking to now, will also be there signing Woodlawn, the book. So be sure you get by there.
Rick and Bubba.
Dad, and even he himself, portrayed in the movie Woodlawn. He's written the book that goes back and gives you the history and more details of all the true story that now has become the movie that a lot of people are thinking it could be a blockbuster this weekend. And if the premiere in Birmingham's any indication, it looks good for tonight. Even my son, it's just weird that we know the Gerelds family. We met each other when our dads coached together at Woodlawn and then became friends and stayed friends and still continue to be friends today. And then when this movie finally gets produced and this book that Todd has written, and then one of the roles in the movie ends up being played by a Burgess, is just weird.
It is weird.
That all of us, how all this is tied together. God definitely has a sense of humor. But you were talking about some of the things that are in the book. And you're also, there's a lot of people that play roles that you don't even think about. And you were talking about in the break, I think we want to share this and then we'll take some phone calls.
Sure.
About, in the movie it documents that your dad, through this process of the racial, unrest in the city, you have, Wells Goebel and Hank Irwin, these chaplains come in and they introduce the gospel into the school. Kind of a novel idea. And then it radically changes the students. That changes everyone's point of view. And this thing starts picking up momentum, and a simple FCA meeting in someone's home leads to your dad's salvation.
Yeah.
And tell how you ended up getting to let somebody know that. How many years later?
However, let's say 40.
The point is when you just simply obey.
Amen.
Listen to this. This is a good example.
Really, Dad's conversion is kind of it's the gospel being lived out that brought him to Christ. John 13:34 and 35, Jesus said, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you." That's a big command.
That's a big one.
And then he says, "And by this people will know you are my disciples, by the love you have one for another." And really, that's one of the greatest apologetics for the gospel for some people. Dad had heard the gospel, but he was seeing the gospel every day, this transforming power of the love of God. And for some people, that's, they hold Christianity out here because they've heard it, but they haven't seen it. And Dad was like that. I mean, he's kind of in the movies, the cynic, and that was the reality. And so he was invited. The team was having an FCA meeting at the Miller's home. It's in the book, in Crestwood. And at that time, Crestwood was all white. And in the movie and in the book, Dad's kind of dubious as to whether or not you're going to see any of the black kids show up in Crestwood for this.
Yeah.
So he goes and he stands in the back and he's watching, and these black guys and white guys, people who a couple of weeks ago had really been very cliquish and to themselves. He said they had their arms around each other, they're praying together, they're cutting up, they're having fun. And Dad said he realized he didn't really fit in. they loved him. They weren't neglecting him.
Right.
He didn't have that. So he slipped out the back kind of quietly and started driving home and speaking through the windshield of his car to a God he wasn't sure existed. He said, I don't have what they have. I want that. That conversation with God lasted all the way till he pulled into 1139 Kawanda Lane, and he got on his knees beside his bed, and his life changed forever. Christ became his Lord and Savior. So years later, now 40-ish years later.
Think about that now.
I'm on a message board. I'm an Auburn fan.
Which, by the way, that technology wasn't available.
Now it is.
Right.
And a guy sends me a message and says, hey, I'm so excited about this movie. I'm young. My brother, Howie Miller, was there, and I'm younger. I came behind them. But my mom is so excited about this story. Could you send her a book and sign it? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And I said, now, what's your name? And he said, Miller. And he said, I said, you related to Howie Miller? And he said, yeah. I said, oh, my gosh. You're not going to believe this, but my dad came. He said, we had all the team over at the house. I said, I know. And I said, and my dad was not a believer that night you guys had everybody over, but your mom's simple obedience to being hospitable, opening her home up to this whole football team at a time when that was not common.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was, there were neighbors probably looking.
Right. Well, yeah.
Right.
And I said, my dad left there and was so moved by the love he saw in that room that he told God, I want that. I want that love that they have. And really, in the movie, the words that Nick Bishop says in that scene,
the words are accurate.
Mm-hmm. They are my dad's actual words in his testimony. And that when I watched that scene being filmed, I cried.
Of course you did.
It's just because it was so real. But so I sent a note to his mom and told her that your obedience 40 years ago led to my dad coming to Christ and the impact he had on lives and him being with Jesus today.
Well, now let's look at the butterfly effect.
Yep.
But then not only that, your dad has his incredible testimony for the rest of his life, and that was obvious at his funeral, as people who he had coached and influenced and probably even sold insurance with for a time, all flocked. So that's one legacy that she was part of.
Right.
Okay? Now the movie. See, there wouldn't be a movie about it if the story had not happened. The story had to be intriguing enough for somebody else to do a movie. So now she plays a role in a movie that will be used as an evangelical tool that will be reaching people that don't even know who you and me or any of us are.
Millions and millions. I mean,
wow.
all over the world.
Right. And so you see, and what did it start with?
Obedience.
But it was more than just we're going to have a gathering, because your dad, if he had walked in and saw only white kids there, would have probably said, "See, this is what I thought." They say one thing.
Right,
but they don't really live it. They're not going to invite these black kids into their house over here in Crestwood.
But see, the gospel is the power of God for salvation, and it drew those kids together.
Right,
and there's no getting
around. So he didn't
that.
just see a gathering; he saw a gathering that was different.
That's exactly right.
And he said, "Wow, this is something I don't have."
Absolutely, and really to the point I was talking about off air, just that Tony's a superstar, and there are a few superstars in the world, and we all kind of consider ourselves ordinary a lot, but God doesn't. God does the extraordinary with the ordinary because he sees all of us as extraordinary. He's gifted each person in different ways, and obedience is the critical factor. He can work through anyone who's willing to obey him, and he does. And, we just ask for eyes to see it, and God, let me know that you're working through me, and let me look for these opportunities, because he's going to do it. Mm-hmm. And, Miss Miller had no idea.
Well, I mean, we know Tony Nathan, and he is a hero, no doubt. And he's a humble man and deserves all the accolades.
Absolutely.
Used his platform to be
one of the best people I've ever met.
Right. But so is Miss Miller.
Amen.
You know what I mean? And she's as big a star as this as anybody, and you don't even know who she is until just then.
It's unreal.
So pretty incredible. Lynn has a question. Lynn, your question for Todd Gerelds. Go ahead.
Hey, Lucky Grass from Green Acres.
All right, thanks for calling, buddy. You won't hear that on many media tours. All right, go ahead, Lynn.
Just let him know that
he's listening.
Not only happened at Woodlawn. I was at Irwin. We actually played Woodlawn my junior year. I believe we held Tony to 261 yards. But the story of Mike Allison, we all keyed on on Tony, and Mike Allison runs the first play of the game like 40 yards downfield too. By the way.
Yeah, that's who my son plays. My son plays Mike Allison in the movie.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, that movement also happened at Irwin that year too. I mean, we were 2-2-1 the first 5 games, and we were 5-0 the last 5 games. But we had a tremendous movement through the FCA during that time too. So don't let him think that it just happened at Woodlawn. It happened at Irwin that year too. But the story about his dad was my mom was a manager of Hibbett's over at the Eastwood Mall. His dad came into my mom's store and goes, I got this kid, his waist is a 28, but his thighs are like 40 inches. Do you have any type of clothes or any type of football pants that'll fit this kid? Yeah. And so that it was just really odd on y'all telling the story, playing against Tony, and I'm the same age as Tony, and just seeing what y'all done and how God's moved. And, hey, it's a great thing, but it happened at a lot of other schools that year also.
And you talk about thanks for the call. And you talk about that in the book. This really didn't just change Woodlawn.
No,
it went over into Banks, and then before you knew it, it went out through the whole city, like this guy just said.
Absolutely, and also the coach he had over there at that time had just left Woodlawn. Was John Lee Armstrong, and so your dad came in behind John Lee Armstrong. And
so that was the pecking order. So this guy goes to Irwin. Dad comes in from Banks. And your dad's already there.
Yeah, John Lee hired Dad, and then your dad came in and kept Dad. And we were very happy about that. But God was working. I actually was talking to someone last night, and they were asking, was this limited? And no, the revival. It's kind of like a good virus. Kids go to school, they come home with something, everybody in the family gets it. It spreads from there.
Right.
And that's how evangelism works. One person brings it to another person, and that exponential impact. And so it's really not a shock. And that's what's so exciting about this, because we didn't have the type of mass influence and to the Irwin brothers' credit, they don't pull any punches. This is a very strong presentation of the gospel in a way that if you aren't a believer, you're going to still enjoy this movie. Your worldview is just going to be challenged. It's going to be challenged. Right. And because it's undeniable that something amazing happened.
Right. Well, you make a great point, because we were talking about, they could have easily had a much easier time on distribution if they'd been willing to compromise the message, because there were some big distributors that were saying, we're in, but we have to tone this down a little bit and make it just a little more of a football movie. And it is a great football movie in and of itself.
Yeah.
It just happens to have, like you said, a life-changing message. Let's go to Jason in Alabama. Jason, go ahead. Welcome to the program.
Hey, guys. How are y'all doing this morning?
Good, great.
Green Acres.
Hey, thanks for the call. Glad you're working. Go right ahead.
Just kind of a 7 ways to Kevin Bacon thing here. I heard y'all mention the name of Wells Goebel.
Yeah.
Is one of the chaplains that came in during the Woodlawn thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if y'all are aware, but he is actually the founder of Save a Life.
Yes,
that
true.
started in Birmingham.
That's right.
Merged with CareNet, and now CareNet is a national affiliate that is one of the biggest competitors against Planned Parenthood.
You're right. I met Wells when we moved back to Birmingham, because obviously since we knew each other's kids, we were here. I was born here. And I met Wells Goebel, one of the first people I met when we were trying to look for somewhere where we're going to start to worship and plug in. And he told me the whole story. He was the first one that ever had I heard him present the message, we can't just be pro-birth. We got to be pro-life.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Meaning, are we just going to abandon these girls now that we say if you're in a situation, or are we going to actually come alongside them and help them?
Right.
And I thought that was the first time I'd ever had somebody actually laid that out. All right, we got to get one more before we go to the break, and that's this Kathy, who says her mom is Sarah Miller. Kathy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
go
you.
ahead.
So was it?
Okay, I'm in my car. I don't have a radio at my house, and it was faster to jump in the car in my driveway to start listening than it was to boot my computer up.
Yeah. So is this your mom that Todd's talking about?
Yes, my mom is Sarah Miller. My brother is Howie. I'm one of 7 children. I have an older brother, Joey, who graduated from Woodlawn in '73.
Wow.
So he actually was on the team. He was a freshman at Auburn when in the fall of '73. My husband is my high school sweetheart, Skip Benton, and he was an offensive lineman, number 72, offensive guard, right guard, and on when Tony was a junior.
Well, so your mom is the woman who had the opened her house up and made that happen.
Yeah.
How about that?
This is so cool.
I mean,
Gracious.
All right, everybody in the golden ticket seats today is going to get a copy of the book Woodlawn. They're also going to get the 40-day devotional that goes along with the movie Woodlawn. And everybody in the golden ticket seats today is going to get tickets to go see the Birmingham premiere tonight. So how about that? The golden ticket seats gets all that. We'll be right back.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.